Welcome, everyone. We will start this session promptly on time so that we've got as much discussion time as possible for this session. I could not be more excited to host this discussion, as I think we all recognize collaborative research really forms the bedrock foundation of all of the innovation that we're seeing in the alternative protein space. So this discussion is really critical of how do we build the right ecosystems to encourage that collaboration. We will have about 50 minutes for this discussion, and I'll actually try my best to weave our audience questions in throughout. So please don't feel like you have to wait until the end of this conversation to drop a question right in that chat window to the right. Just make sure you're clicked on session there and then chat, and I'll be able to see that feed as I'm moderating here. I'd also like to remind everyone to honor our participation guidelines so we can have really a robust, productive discussion here, both on our panel and in the chat. And finally, if you are experiencing any technical difficulties throughout this session, please exit the session and then find the help desk booth, which is located in the expo hall that you'll see over on the left-hand side of your screen. So with that, I'd love to dive into it here. I'm so delighted to be joined for this discussion by such an esteemed group here, and I'd love to welcome our panelists to turn cameras on and join me on the virtual stage here. We really have an extraordinary array of perspectives represented on this panel, from folks leading interdisciplinary research initiatives across different geographies and sectors, ranging from the European Union's Smart Protein Project, the Nordic Joint Committee on Agriculture and Food Research, Singapore's foremost agency for science, technology, and research, and even the Engineering Biology Research Consortium and the brand new Manufacturing USA Institute, BioMADE. So we'll get to hear about all of these different models for spurring collaborative research and what you all are doing in alternative proteins. So I'd like to start by allowing each of our panelists to briefly introduce yourselves and particularly shine a spotlight on how your background gives you insight into various models for facilitating research and innovation. Maybe Kelvin, let's start with you.
Thank you, Liz, for this opportunity, and thank you for everyone, especially my friends in Singapore who are here. It's quite late, I know. So myself, I currently look after innovation and enterprise and one of the research institutes at A*STAR. A*STAR stands for the Agency for Science, Technology, and Research. We are actually a government agency that deals with research. My background is actually a stem cell scientist. I looked a lot at biomanufacturing. In fact, the institute that I work for currently is the Bioprocessing Technology Institute. So with that background, I started off looking into cultured meat initially, and that quickly expanded into the entire alternative protein space. I think they all share a very similar mission. So that's how I got involved in the Singapore food story, which I'll share more a bit later if I have a chance. But we do have a 30 by 30 goal in Singapore, which is to increase our food production from less than 10% to 30% by 2030.
Excellent. I'll move on to Doug. You're the next I see on my screen. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Liz, for having me. My name's Doug Friedman, and about 5 years ago, I was part of founding something called the Engineering Biology Research Consortium, and am now leading an organization called BioMADE. I think what I'd like to kind of kick off with here is that collaboration and coordination really opens up an incredible number of opportunities for research and innovation, especially when you have some real goals and targets in mind. And so my former organization, the EBRC, is a public-private partnership that involves academia, industry, and government across all of engineering biology, really trying to think about what can engineering biology do to help people in the environment. And so what are those goals, and then how can the research community writ large collaborate and coordinate to help meet those? Now, my new organization, BioMADE, as Liz mentioned, is a Manufacturing USA Institute. And so that really is trying to take that to the next step in industrial biomanufacturing, which for us includes alternative proteins, to be completely clear at the Good Food Conference. And so, one of the questions that I have been interested in and have really learned from the modern biotech and engineering biology research community is that to do the work that we want to do and ultimately impact society, we have to do it at a scale that matters. And so moving from the laboratory research to the relevant scale manufacturing is the only way you're going to have that broad societal impact that we're hoping to have. And BioMADE exists to help companies, universities, and others really transition from the innovative research and development activities that occur in the lab, to manufacturing in a way that can help industrial processes succeed. Very happy to be with you all today.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Let's go to you, Jette.
Yes, I'm Jette Young from Aarhus University in Denmark. I'm at the Institute of Food Science. And thank you for inviting me to this. I think it's very important that we also introduce the food science into this space, since it's almost been more dominated by the medical and pharmaceutical areas, of course, because they have a very good reason for tissue engineering, which food scientists have not until now. So I'm very pleased to be here. My background is exactly in food science, partly the quality of meat and partly in human nutrition. So with that background in both areas, I've actually been working on model systems of culturing primary cells from meat-producing animals. So with that background, it sort of seemed logical to enter this space, because I think it's important that we have this very interdisciplinary approach, and we have a lot to learn from each other, and we need a lot of different skills to make this fly, I think. So so with that, I'll just say thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to our discussion. I'm leading a science group at Aarhus University, where we're trying to make this fly, and I'm also leading a Nordic collaboration network in this space. So we're trying to reach out.
Excellent. And how about you, Denise?
Yeah, first of all, also a hard welcome from Germany. So thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm here to tell you something about our project Smart Protein, where I'm working in. So myself, I'm heading the sustainability department at EBRC. EBRC is an international consulting company for innovation and technology. And what we do there is to support companies and also research organizations and institutes of all sizes to enable their technical innovations. And this we do by supporting them in the innovation making process and also in funding activities. So that means we also look for funding opportunities for the customers and also to help them to get funding finally. But also in the context of sustainability. So today, innovations, they need to be seen in the context of sustainability to be competitive or to receive funding at all. And that's my job and also my team's job. So we are leading the work package of sustainability assessment in the Smart Protein project, which is a European Union funded project, I will tell later some more about it. And in general, so here in Germany, where I am located, but also in a European context, we have great opportunities to get fundings, covering all TRL levels in general and all stages of development. But nonetheless, one has to be very innovative and disruptive to overcome, let's say, low probability of funding and to finally win in such calls, and therefore also interdisciplinary approaches and concepts are necessary.
Fantastic. Well, this is quite the array of perspectives here. So thanks everyone for joining. Doug, I'd like to jump back over to you. As you mentioned, you're leading this brand new manufacturing institute after having led a nonprofit private-public partnership. Could you tell us a little bit more about what led to the creation of BioMADE and how your work at EBRC before that informed the strategic direction that BioMADE's taken?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So BioMADE is a Manufacturing USA Institute. And so what that means is that we exist to solidify the foundation of a manufacturing space. Of course, in the US, it's a Manufacturing USA Institute funded by the US federal government. So, but what that means for us is unique. So we're focused on bioindustrial manufacturing, which gets back to what I was saying really in my introduction to sort of myself, where we are interested in creating a space where relevant scales of molecules can be produced. And those molecules can be anything from commodity chemicals to other small molecules, to monomers for polymerization, to alternative proteins. All are on the table for us to be interested in. And it really comes from this idea that engineering biology and modern biotechnology has advanced to the point where if I, as a physical organic chemist by background who doesn't know how to do any of this myself, draw on the whiteboard a molecule and say, all right, all you synthetic biology folks, can you design an organism to make that? Well, a lot of them now can say yes, and I can draw almost anything. And it's really a remarkable thing that we have the power to manipulate biological systems to spit out a molecule of interest for something. Now, the challenge comes from, well, what are you going to do with that molecule? If we're talking about alternative proteins, or if we're talking about commodity chemicals, you need kilograms and tons of that molecule in order for it to have the societal impact that you want. And so all of the effort over the last 20 years that's gone into being able to engineer biology is really focused on getting a peak in a mass spec for all the scientists and engineers out there, right? Getting a couple of milligrams of material is often a success, and it really is a success. But in order for it to have that societal impact, we have to get from milligrams through kilograms to metric tons to be able to distribute to society. And so what I learned over from listening to many smart colleagues from EBRC over the last several years is that we need a coordinated campaign to get that done. There's been so much focus on the early stage that now we need to transition that. And so when this opportunity came up for a Bioindustrial Manufacturing Innovation Institute, EBRC, with nearly 100 collaborative partners across the US, put together this idea for how we can transition from all of that remarkable early R&D to manufactured products in a way that is sustainable, in a way that meets the climate and market objectives that are both required for a product to ultimately meet the demand that we see, as well as work in a collaborative environment to have a foundation to do it quickly and cheaply enough so that it actually can be a success. And so the last comment I'll make, just to differentiate what we focus on from other industries, particularly the biopharmaceutical industry. The biopharmaceutical industry has an incredible experience manufacturing proteins and other molecules using biology. But cost is a very different thing in the pharmaceutical industry than it is in industrial products, including food, right? In pharma, you're talking very small quantity, very high price. And so what you can spend through the R&D cycle, what you can spend even in manufacturing is just fundamentally different in terms of market and business model than it is in what we're talking about here. And so one of the most important things that BioMADE, I think, can do working with the community is establish mechanisms to make it faster and cheaper to get kilograms of material that you can test so that it is possible for products to fail and companies to not go out of business. And so I think I'll leave it there for now, and really look forward to hearing from the colleagues here on the call on how we can think about doing all of these things better in a more robust way on a global scale.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, that commercial translation element is so important. Kelvin, I'd like to jump across the Pacific to you. You mentioned Singapore's 30 by 30 initiative. This is, of course, a pretty urgent, real world, very pragmatic, scalable endeavor. But A*STAR is operating both at kind of the basic research and that translational commercialization element through pretty strong tech transfer capabilities. Could you talk more about what A*STAR's role is in getting to this 30 by 30 future?
Definitely. So A*STAR does two roles. One is to administer research funding, but also to perform research. We have about 4,000 over researchers within under one roof, spread across 20 over research institutes and programs. And when we administer funding, we don't do it just with our research institutes, but also with the entire Singapore public sector. So we do understand that, food security and food resilience require a lot of cross-disciplinary research. Now, A*STAR's role as a research organization in general is to enable economic outcomes that we're looking to make sure that food security can be possible. We understand that in order for Singapore to be able to feed itself, the business models in Singapore must make sense and they must be commercially viable in the long run. So beyond manufacturing, there needs to be exportability, there needs to be safety, and there needs to be relatability. So there are different things that we have to solve, and food science, for example, alone is not enough. We need to look into biomanufacturing. We might have to look into digital technologies. So what we have done so far is to take lessons from our past. Singapore is not only susceptible, especially to food security issues, because we are a small country. We cannot produce a lot of food. So we import more than 90% of our food currently. But before this, we were solving our water problem. Because Singapore is also a small country, we have to take our water in from different parts of the world. So we had a Singapore water story, and it was solved quite successfully. Now we are ambitious enough to also solve the food story. Anyone who has been to Singapore might see that Singapore is a small country with big dreams. So food is currently our big dream, and we have to solve it with data. We have to solve it with ideas that are grounded, and we have to solve it with research and with collaboration. And that's the reason why we have the Singapore food story and the 30 by 30 goal.
Excellent. Yeah, so important on all of those fronts. I'd love to jump to Europe now, and maybe go to you, Denise. I'd love to hear more about the Smart Protein Project and the role of the various different stakeholders involved there.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said at the beginning, so this project is funded by the European Union, and it's a project in the framework of Horizon Europe, or Horizon 2020, let's say. And in general, it follows a quite typical European approach that involves universities, small and also big companies that are working together to reach, let's say, a well-defined and expected impact. And in this context, we are contributing by a sustainability assessment, and for sure also to pave the way to the market for these proteins we would like to develop in this project, or these protein products at the end. So the idea in the project is to validate and to demonstrate innovative and cost-effective as well as resource-efficient plant protein products from lentils and also from chickpeas and quinoa, and the production should take place in Europe. And another idea of the project is to include also the production of microbial mass proteins. So that means they will be created from fungi by upcycling of side streams that comes from, for instance, the beer industry and the pasta industry. So this is quite a new approach to overcome the high, let's say, environmental burdens of food industry. And in this project, we have some very innovative universities in the food sector, that come across Europe. And there is also a long transition of them working together, also with capable medium-sized companies that sooner or later turn these developments into products. And in addition, there is also a very big interaction between large companies and also young partners, especially startups. And in this project, everyone agrees that we need to speed up in order to really bring about a food transition. And in many areas, this just can be achieved through improved production and thus through the price. And the breakthrough is in fermentation, the use of bioreactors and cultured meat or fish, and this has not reached that stage yet. And so it is quite important for me especially, to address sustainability in this project and to not neglect costs as well as environmental impact, but also to address for sure consumer awareness and the thinking of consumers, but also the resilience of farmers, for instance, to adopt new strategies in the future related to climate change. And this is a part of our work in the project here.
Great. Denise, you noted that cultivated meat is a little further behind plant-based and microbial fermentation. I'd love to go now to you, Jette, as a researcher in the cultivated meat space. I think you bring a rather different European perspective here that you can really speak from the point of view of an academic researcher deeply engaged in this research and working with various collaborators convened under different models. How have you served as a convener and a coordinator in the alternative meat research ecosystem, and what programs have you been working with that have facilitated that collaborative approach?
Well, I think, yes, we're sort of deeply into that space, you could say, but it's sort of through the background of several people in my group, because actually the first Ph.D. we've had in that sort of specifically on cultured meat, that was in 2020. And well, since then we've had Corona, but we've still managed to get quite far in the area. But we've taken the approach, since we are from the Food Institute and we are also meat researchers, the couple of us who's taken it on, that we are taking sort of a circular approach where we're trying to make a robust way of sampling, like from the carcass, so we could maybe use the sort of the satellite cells, sort of stem cell that's already in this sort of myogenic line, taking the starting point from a material from the carcass and manage to make a stable product from that. So that's one project that's actually financed by the ministry, the Danish ministry. They made a special call in relation to environmental issues, and that's actually the very first call where it was actually stipulated that they wanted a project in also, or probably within in vitro meat, I think the wording was. Since then, we've started, and then we thought that, well, we know collaborators in Norway and FEMA that's also looking at sort of the same issues as us. They're looking a lot of side streams to use that in the culture media. So we contacted them, and also University of Helsinki working with life cycle analysis, University of Bergen working in sort of the philosophy part of it, sort of what is our sort of license to produce in this space. We've got Rallis that's also working on more the human well, partly human intervention, but actually more sort of on a questionnaire basis. How do we make it acceptable? How acceptable is it in different countries to make this approach? So that's where we made this Nordic collaboration, which is actually quite. We get quite a bit out of it, and in that space, we identified that we could see a lot of potential collaborators. But we were not quite sure they could see us. So we made this workshop where we invited companies in, big, small, whatever, just interested people to have a peek, because many would quite like to follow it on the sideline or be a fly on the wall and see what's happening, but don't really want to be engaged. Or some don't really want to show that they're interested, even though they're following it. So we just made a sort of, just come and have a look. We do our presentations, and then we showed them where we could see that maybe they could play a part in this. And I have to say, after that, I've been contacted by a lot of I can't say weird people because they're not, but very, very diverse, I would say, actors in this area that I had never been in contact with before. So it's quite an interesting area. After that, we also got funding from our own university. They have a pool where for projects or lines of research that can't be funded anywhere else, and that's sort of the situation we were in. We're not close to market, we're not fundamental enough. We applied but not applied enough. So we got a project there looking at actually the taste part. Once say the product leaves the bioreactor, then what happens? Then you've got tissue, and as a meat scientist, you say, well, you don't have meat, then you've got tissue. So then we need to make it taste like meat, and of course you can add a lot of components, but again, you can, if you the cells themselves has got the inherent enzymes to actually make the taste components if we treat it properly after the bioreactor. So that was that project, and then we got a GFI funded project as well, looking at the transcriptomics and the metabolites that come after in the whole process, to look at the biomolecules that affect the whole process. So that's sort of the funding we've got until now. A little project on scaffolding as well, from a Danish foundation, Food and Biocluster Denmark.
Great. Yeah, you're mentioning a theme that I think is really well known in this field of the so-called valley of death between very basic research and applied research, but not applied enough. And I think a lot of these collaborative ecosystem models allow for industry partners to get involved in research at an earlier stage than would otherwise be possible for them to, say, make a deliberate investment in. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more from anyone on the panel. How do industry partners interact in the models and initiatives that you're part of? What's their role in these collaborative models? And how can we make sure that they're deriving value from these interactions without stifling the open innovation that's so important here, that will really advance the whole field?
I would say that
Denise, do you want to speak to this? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jette.
Oh, I'll just say that in our Nordic network, we've got a very active partner, the Aarhus AAK, and they're quite a big company. They don't see any immediate benefit, but they say, well, at some point, lipid is going to play a role here, and they're just they're in there to be part of the discussions. And I think showing that you're part of the discussions is really, really important, because that's the only way we and they realize where can we actually go into collaborations.
Excellent. Denise, you might have some perspectives on this as well. Looks like you're on mute still.
Sorry, thank you. So generally spoken, everybody or each stakeholder should participate in the R&D progress or in this topic of evaluation and market entry. So we need big industries, we need small industries, so we need laboratory equipment, we need the importance on the market of a single let's say companies and also among retailers. So everybody has its role in this process and is needed in such projects. Yeah, for sure. Of course, there is also a danger or possibility that maybe a large company will buy up a small company, but sometimes this is also even desired by both. So of course, in such projects, we have to discuss patent issues, IPR issues as well. To know who has which role, for sure, but in general everybody or each stakeholder is needed along the value chain, so we need to get in discussion together.
Yeah, I think we are certainly starting to see some mergers and acquisitions as the alternative protein field matures a little bit. And I think having, these collaborative research centers as a mechanism for larger companies and smaller companies to have some working relationship with each other and build that trust can actually lead to ensuring that transaction is the right fit for both partners. Doug, I'd love your insight here as well. You have, of course, a lot of industry partners involved in BioMADE. How are they thinking about the value add for them in the context of a shared knowledge research center?
Sure. So I actually I'll give two examples. I want to give one maybe first from EBRC, and then I'll give one from BioMADE, because I think they're two actually quite different examples. And the one from EBRC builds directly on what Denise was talking about. And it's this idea of visibility. So in EBRC, we have both companies and researchers all involved together, but they don't, many of them collaborate, but no one actually has collaborative research through EBRC. It's all about having visibility of what's going on in the broader ecosystem at the right time. So a company has good visibility into what's going on in academic labs around the country and around the world, so that at the right time, they know that research has progressed to a certain area, they can come in and initiate a collaboration, or the academic can go reach out to the company that they now have a relationship with and initiate a collaboration, or spin out a company and that company initiates a collaboration. And so having that visibility has proven very helpful and really spurred a lot of collaborative opportunities to advance R&D from more basic and fundamental research into applied research. Now, on the BioMADE side of the world, things are a little bit different and much more solidified. BioMADE directly funds research projects through collaborative teams and has a shared IP model where anyone who receives funding from BioMADE is required to share IP developed with that funding under an ecosystem model. So now what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of implications to that. But the way I talk about it within BioMADE and within the BioMADE ecosystem is that companies often think about their core IP and then potentially ancillary or industry foundational IP. I am open when I say, do not propose developing more core IP with BioMADE because you don't want to share that with other companies. That is not good for your business, right? We know that. But there's an incredible amount of ancillary IP that really could be shared. And that is why BioMADE wants to fund those things, because we want to solidify the industry foundation that helps really everyone within the broader ecosystem. So if we're talking about something that is, related to your business, right, but you could take some funding from an outside entity, develop new tools, technologies that will help your business and should help your business, but also could be shared in the ecosystem and don't, undercut your core business model and business strategy or impinge on your core IP, those to us are the real collaborative research opportunities across everyone. And of course, no one likes to give up. No company, no university, no one really likes to give up the IP that they're developing as part of a collaborative model. But for us, in exchange for research funding, you can develop some very interesting research projects that allow you to bridge the gap. And we in industrial biotech talk about the valley of death all the time, and really raise that valley so that there is more predictability getting from this early R&D to commercialization. And for BioMADE, it's about doing that for the industry, which is why we have this model. And every individual company has a role to play in that. Every individual research organization has a role to play in that. And it's about identifying, and this is a big part of what the BioMADE internal team does, helping companies identify, this might be a really good opportunity for you with this other company over here, with this research university over here, that together can be really powerful for the industry. Everyone protects their core IP, but together we've raised that valley just a little bit, and doing that over and over again, turns the valley into an actual trajectory to get to some commercialized products, which is the overall objective.
I'm tempted to mix metaphors here with valley of death and rising tide lifts all boats. Maybe that valley is a reservoir and we're filling the reservoir, which may be a sore subject here in the West with the drought we're in. Kelvin, I'd love your perspective on this as well. How does A*STAR approach IP that's being spun out of the work you're doing?
Oh, wow. I have a lot to share. I'll try to summarize as much as I can. So A*STAR is a huge organization, and we are very familiar with working with industry. Typically, on average, we have more than 2,000 industry collaborations a year across our 4,000 different science researchers. That's about 2 researchers we put on each industry project on average. This year, we have finally launched a Center of Excellence for cultivated research. We are still preparing the marketing materials. It's not up on the public domain yet, but you've already seen this week that we have announced a collaboration with Avant Meats, who's moving to Singapore and set up their R&D presence as well as their pilot production here in Singapore. So what happens is, when A*STAR tries to enable a company's economic success or commercial success, we don't only use IP. A*STAR is driven by co-developing IP with companies. And sometimes the IP can be fully owned by the company. Sometimes it's co-owned, but definitely we allow them to have some licensing options, because eventually we need these technologies to go into the private sector. Now, for technologies that A*STAR grows internally, we also have spin-off opportunities. Now, the important thing about collaboration is that we need to establish trust between the private sector and also with the public sector, and also within the public sector and within the private sector. Singapore has, A*STAR has a lot of experience in building such collaborations. We do have an advanced remanufacturing technology consortium that was a center that was built as a consortium of over 80 members, ranging from small and medium enterprises to multinational company corporations. So we can also do something very similar for the alternative protein space. Right now, we have funded a couple of alternative protein research programs, and they are in isolation, culture being one, and we have others, which I think if you're interested, just reach out to me and I'll connect you to the different offices. But in terms of IP, we are also worried that IP goes with the talent. As talent flow between public and private sectors, the IP goes with them. Of course, you need to have the legal things and legal clauses in place to prevent, to discourage a certain type of IP leakage. And Singapore has been very good at IP regulation, IP policy making. In fact, the current head of the World Intellectual Property Organization is a Singaporean. So we are very respectful of IP, and we make sure that companies feel safe doing that. In the food space, we started more than 10 years ago in nutrition research. And with that, we established a lot of know-how in understanding the Asian phenotype. we discovered that in the Asian countries, there are certain foods, well, people over here respond to certain foods differently than in the rest of the world. With that, we managed to attract a bunch of brand owners and ingredient makers into Singapore. That's our second wave of food industry expansion. And now we're seeing a lot of growth associated with investors and accelerators. And that gave us a lot of startups here in Singapore, a rising population of startups. So all these companies will need certain type of collaboration in order to complement their in-house research. A-STAR is a very interesting organization where we sit in between public and private, and we report to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Our job is to use IP to stimulate the economy, and that means innovation. So we work not just internally, but also with industry in order to help them find different opportunities, starting with Singapore. And if they want to go overseas and expand, please go ahead. But we do hope that, Singapore gets the benefit along the way, because we need to feed our Singaporeans.
Great. I'd love to build on that and weave in a question from the chat here that I had as well. A question from Pierce about global or intercontinental collaborations versus national or regional. Of course, virtually all of the agencies and initiatives we've talked about so far have been at the regional or national level. Do any of you see value in more global commitments to innovation and research in alternative proteins, or do you see that as feasible or not feasible?
Definitely, I'll start there. I guess right by now we have already done research collaborations on a G2G level, or government to government level, with countries like Australia, with New Zealand, and we do have another partnership of future. These are all public information with the UK. And we are also trying to establish links with other countries on a research with the research agenda, because we realize that Singapore, as a small country, even though we have rich talent, we need to collaborate overseas in order to enable more global type of impact. So we also offer scholarships. Some talent needs to be requires some opportunities, and we foster such talent exchange through scholarships. Our scholarships are available not just to locals, but also to foreigners, with an opportunity to pursue research here in Singapore. And my colleague, Professor William Chen, will be sharing more about talent pipeline in a few hours. That's all I have to share, I think, for now. But I think that sustainability and alternative proteins has to be a global effort. A country cannot do it alone. We breathe the same air, we walk the same earth. We have to do it together.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in there? Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, so in general, I'm totally with you, Kelvin. So it's a global discussion, or it should be a global discussion, because we are also discussing trade and, of course, transport, and how sustainable is it? Where should we produce our products? What is the best, the most sustainable protein? Should we import it or whatever? So there are a lot of questions that need to be addressed globally, but in general, especially when we discuss in the context of smart protein, things have to be firstly addressed in let's say on a national or European level, because we are discussing alternative proteins and cultivation methods in Europe. And so for sure we have to discuss it in a locally or regionally or let's say a European level. But nevertheless, it's a global issue, so we have to address it sooner or later, globally, to also discuss economic independency and so on. Yeah.
Excellent. Doug, did you have comments you wanted to add to that as well?
I'll just be brief. I was going to reinforce the fact that global scientific collaboration has resulted in many good things, and we need to, really. There is no field that is not true. And so the alternative protein, it's easy for me to say yes, absolutely. I'll say from EBRC. So both EBRC and BioMADE are primarily funded by the U.S. federal government, which means we're primarily focused in the U.S. But EBRC specifically, right, we have colleagues from around the world. I'll pick on Singapore and Germany here. EBRC has members in Singapore and members in Germany that actively participate. I know EBRC is better for it, and we have more robust discussions, and I believe it's useful for the colleagues around the world. One of the things we have learned, though, is that it's very helpful to set, initially discuss what's on the table and what's not, right? Sometimes there are areas that global collaboration is a lot harder than others. And so just having an open discussion about, where can we be the most productive together, and where do we imagine we're going to hit a lot of barriers, so that we can focus our energy on saying, all right, these areas we're going to hit barriers, maybe we'll focus nationally. These areas open real opportunity for global collaboration. Let's, do those at twice the speed and really work on those together.
Great. Yeah, great perspective there. So as we're coming to the end of our time here, I'd like to do sort of a rapid fire round robin to close us out here. What would you most like to see happen in the next 1 or 2 years to foster a more robust innovation ecosystem for alternative proteins? I'll start with you, Jette.
Yes, I think, as we see here, there's a lot of buy-in from really important industries, and for scaling up and all the rest of it is extremely important. That said, I think it's also extremely important that there's some public funding, so that we can get more knowledge out into the public domain, basically. Because when a lot of companies contact me and they say, well, where can I read about it? Well, it's very, very scarce what is actually out there in the public domain. And I know the field is a lot further than what you can see in the scientific literature. And that is really a shame that it's not really showcased. But of course, it's IPR, and I respect that. But I think for academia actually to get into this, it's so important that the public funding also see this area and fund projects in it, and collaborations. I agree totally. We need to collaborate a lot across borders to step up this area.
Amen to that. Thanks. How about you, Denise? What would you like to see in the next year or two?
Yeah, for me, it's the same. So collaboration, also awareness rising on this issue. And we should also discuss the food pricing system sooner or later, because, we should avoid, let's say, sustainable food that is, or let's say healthy and environmentally friendly food, which is at the end not payable by the consumer. So we should discuss also how to include environmental costs in the production, and how to also put awareness on this issue to, at the end, come up with a more environmentally friendly direction.
Great. How about you, Doug?
I would like to see more direct engagement with parts of the research community that have never thought their work could contribute to advances in alternative protein and food, but in fact could, with the right interactions, collaborations, and outreach.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is far more interdisciplinary than I think we often recognize. Great. And Kelvin?
Definitely more collaboration. I think I'm going to say it. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. We breathe the same air, we walk the same earth, and we also obey the same laws of nature. So hopefully we realize that, and whether it's public or private, notice that, the public sector can be a neutral ground for many private entities to collaborate with. And over here, we try to make it safe for you. So hopefully we can see more collaborations in the future. And don't be shy to share more.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to this all-star panel. I really appreciate all of you sharing your perspectives with us. This really gives us some great food for thought to carry forward into the rest of the conference here. Before we sign off, I wanted to remind our audience to check out the associated resources for this session. You can find hyperlinks to these in the session room here if you just scroll down below in the video screen. So thank you to everyone again for joining us. Really appreciate your comments and your time, and excited for the next few days.